months. And this congressional committee does not have months. So the mere act of going to court may frustrate this committee's position, even if the committee ultimately winds up winning.
Kirsten, Trump's hold on the GOP, as we have been talking, incredibly strong. No surprise there. Can the Select Committee get the answers they need before the midterms? Because if Republicans regain control of Congress, this investigation, I mean, it's done, don't you think?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I can't imagine them investigating something that they claim isn't even a problem. What would the investigation be about from their perspective? And so, look, if Trump has his way, what Jeffrey's saying is, he's trying to gum up the gears, he's trying to slow things down. And so that's part of the point of this, I think. I think the other part of this is just to put it out into Trump land with all of his supporters, the idea that he has the right to assert executive privilege, and that if somehow the documents make their way to the committee, that he's been mistreated, that he asserted executive privilege, this wasn't information that was supposed to go forward, even though that's not how it works, and we know that that's not how it works, that the sitting president is the one who asserts the executive privilege. But I think Trump, as always, is trying to put out another storyline that makes him, seem that he's being victimized by the deep state and the elites in Washington.
Yeah. Jeffrey, let's talk about Steve Bannon refusing to comply with the subpoena, but we're told that Trump's former chief of staff, Mark Meadows, former Pentagon aide Kash Patel, they're, quote, so far engaging with the committee. I'm not exactly sure what that means. Dan Scavino, though, no word on Dan Scavino. The strategy in Trump world, as you said, is to delay at all costs. So considering, when you think about what happens with this committee, is there a best path for them to force these aides to comply, or are they at the mercy of nothing?
I mean, I'm afraid there is not a great path here because the legal system does not work quickly. Even if as appears likely, the committee seeks a criminal contempt charge through the Justice Department. That's a legal proceeding, and that has to go to the district court. And then once a district court hears briefing and hears arguments and writes a decision, that goes to the circuit court. And then after there's briefing and argument and a decision in the circuit court, there's the potential for a petition to the Supreme Court. I mean, this is a months-long process. But it is worth just saying, Don, that it is so outrageous that Steve Bannon, who is a non-governmental actor, who has, who couldn't conceivably assert executive privilege, he is saying he is not going to cooperate with this committee. I mean, that is a...
Does he have any legal standing, Jeffrey?
What?
Does he have any legal standing? Because as you said, he didn't even work for the White House, or no governmental standing.
None at all. But, with the president, the former president asserting executive privilege, it still has to go through the courts. And in my experience, even frivolous legal claims, take weeks, if not months, to resolve themselves. But the Bannon situation, Mark Meadows was the White House chief of staff. There is a conceivable executive privilege claim. With Bannon, there's nothing, absolutely nothing that he could claim, except that he can make, he can keep the former president happy by refusing to testify. And the courts, unless I'm proven wrong, perhaps I will be, it certainly has happened before, will not move quickly enough for Bannon really to be forced to testify in this committee here.
There's another story about how this president and this person has used the courts, and how litigious he is. It's just amazing. There's a whole nother...
Okay, Don, when the House Judiciary Committee subpoenaed Don McGahn, Trump's White House counsel, it took 2 years to get through the court. 2 years. That's the kind of system that we're dealing with here.
Oh, boy. Kirsten, let's talk about another tough thing that's happening, another tough week for the Biden presidency. A disappointing jobs report. The country just barely avoided a default. The debt ceiling remains, right? That mess remains. It's temporary that they're stopping it now, but they're going to have to deal with in December. And his domestic agenda, if I can get my lips to work right on a Friday, is in jeopardy. I mean, Biden ran as a candidate that could get things done. So how's he going to pull all this off?
Well, look, yes, I mean, I think he's trying to get things done, but we also have to keep perspective on this, which is that it's not like he has 60 Democratic votes in the Senate. So he's working with a very narrow majority and with a couple senators who are, aren't going to go along with his agenda that as he's laid it out and are fighting him on it. Look, the majority of Democrats are with him. 48 of the Democrats in the Senate are with him. 2 of them are giving him a hard time. So I think that that's something that he has to now bridge between these 2 sides of the party, and that's hard. So I don't think that we should just say that Biden's not getting things done. He's been dealt a really not great hand, and I think that we don't know yet what's going to happen. So I've been saying I think that they are going to reach a deal. And in terms of the debt ceiling, that's a problem that was created by the Republicans. Joe Biden had nothing to do with it. The Republicans decided that they were going to, not support that. And then the last minute came along and kicked the can down the road, and now are acting like they've saved the day when all they did was fix a problem that they caused.
Temporarily fix the problem that they caused.
Temporarily, exactly. So I think that he's been dealt not the best hand in terms of having 50 Democrats who would support him completely, and so he's got to negotiate this, and I think he's still probably going to pull it off.
Okay, we'll see. Jeffrey, I want to talk to you now about this wildly restrictive abortion law in Texas. A federal judge had stopped the law from being enforced. The state of Texas then appealed, and tonight the 5th U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals granted the state's request. So now what?
Well, I mean, again, Don, it's worth pausing to consider that the women of Texas are being denied constitutional rights that have been guaranteed to them for 50 years since Roe v. Wade. And what the circuit court has done is reinstated this clearly unconstitutional ban. The women of Texas had their constitutional rights for about 3 days. Since this law has went into effect on September 1. What happens now is the Fifth Circuit, this 3-judge panel, the most conservative circuit court in the country, and it looks like this panel, which is 2 Republican appointees, 1 Democratic appointees, will hear briefing and argument, and they will decide whether this law remains in effect. But let's be clear, this law is contrary to Supreme Court precedent, and it is a complete outrage that the Fifth Circuit has reinstated it, perhaps only temporarily, but that's now the state of play. Abortion is now effectively illegal in Texas again, and it will remain that way until the Fifth Circuit acts otherwise.
Kirsten?
Yeah, I mean, what's the commonality of everything that we're talking about here? It's total contempt for the law, right? It's like, don't have to respond to subpoenas, don't have to act like they even understand executive privilege, don't have to honor the Constitution, have created the scheme explicitly to get around the constitutional rights that have been granted to women, according to the Supreme Court, which, last time I checked, decides what the law of the land is. So it's just this utter contempt for the law from the law and order party.
Well, the supposed law and order party, yeah. Unless you don't want to follow that law.
Exactly.
Or the order. The other people's law and order. No, don't do that.
That's totally different, yes.
Thank you both. Have a good weekend. I appreciate it. Now to the former president pressuring Texas to audit the 2020 election, even though Republican state officials have been calling it a success. So why are they pushing his big lie? Here's CNN's Ed Lavandera.
Donald Trump might have won the state of Texas by more than 5 points in the 2020 election, but he won the state by 9 points 4 years earlier. So now the former president is focused on pushing the lie that the vote in Texas was marred by fraud.
They say I'm being aggressive, but you have to be aggressive to weed out this horrible election corruption.
In September, Trump sent Texas Governor Greg Abbott a letter calling for the state to conduct a full forensic audit of the election. With zero evidence, Trump writes, Texans know voter fraud occurred. It didn't take long for Abbott to feel the pressure. On the same day, the Republican governor announced an audit in Harris, Dallas, Tarrant, and Collin counties.
Isn't it just a terrible waste of taxpayer money to have an audit in a state that everybody says went fine and that President Trump won by 600,000 votes? And aren't you contributing to this undermining confidence in our election process?
Why do we audit everything in this world, but people raise their hands in concern when we audit elections, which is fundamental to our democracy?
Earlier this year, the state's election administrator told a legislative committee there were no problems with the election.
In spite of all the circumstances, Texas had an election that was smooth and secure.
President Trump said jump. The governor said how high.
Dallas County Judge Clay Jenkins, a Democrat, says the audit is about undermining democracy and to justify stricter election laws that will make it harder for people to vote.
This